was pouring that night, when the most dangerous misty for Dayer, carrying a Lilith Dever.
Sir. The rain came down in sheets, turning the neon sign of Rossi's Diner into a blurry red smear against the night. Inside, the place smelled of coffee grounds, fryer oil, and the faint sweetness of pancake batter that never quite left the air. It was 10 minutes past closing, but Mia Thompson hadn't flipped the sign to closed yet. She never did on nights like this when the world outside felt too heavy, and the diner felt like the last safe place left. She was behind the counter, wiping the same spot on the stainless steel for the third time, when the bell above the door gave a tired jingle. A man stepped inside, tall, broad in the shoulders, dark coat dripping water onto the black and white tile. In his arms he carried a small boy no more than 5 whose face was pressed into the man's neck like he was trying to disappear. The child's dark hair was soaked, curls plastered to his forehead, and his small body trembled with the kind of silent crying that hurts more than screams. The man didn't speak. He just walked straight to the farthest booth, the one nobody ever chose because the light above it flickered, and sat down carefully, settling the boy beside him like he was made of glass. Mia watched from behind the counter, rag forgotten in her hand. She'd seen plenty of late-night stragglers in the 3 years she'd worked here, truckers with bloodshot eyes, couples fighting in whispers, kids who looked like they were running from something but never anyone who carried the weight. Sir. This man did. The air changed when he entered, thicker, colder. Like the room itself, new danger had just walked in wearing expensive shoes. She took a slow breath, smoothed her apron, and walked over. "Hi," she said softly, keeping her voice low so she wouldn't startle the boy. "We're technically closed, but I can get you something warm. Coffee, hot chocolate for him." The man lifted his head. His eyes were the color of winter sky's gray, sharp, unreadable. A scar ran thin and pale along his left jaw, disappearing into the shadow of his collar. He looked like he could break bones with a glance, yet the way his big hand rested protectively on the boy's back told a different story. "Water," he said, voice low and gravel rough. "And whatever a kid might eat. He hasn't touched anything today." Mia nodded once. She didn't ask questions. She never did when kids were involved. She filled a glass with ice and water, grabbed a small plate from the warmer leftover grilled cheese she'd made for herself earlier, cut into neat triangles the way her little brother used to like, and carried it back. The boy hadn't moved. His knees were drawn to his chest, face still hidden. The man murmured something in soft, rolling Italian, but the child only shook his head, tiny shoulders hunching tighter. Mia set the plate down gently. "Hey, little man," she said, crouching so she was eye level with the booth. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to, but this is still warm. Smells pretty, sir." "Good, right?" No response. She didn't push. Instead, she picked up one triangle, took a small bite, and made an exaggerated happy sound. Still gooey in the middle. Best grilled cheese in the whole city, I swear. The boy peeked just a sliver. Big brown eyes, wet lashes, so much like the man's but softer, younger, full of fear instead of steel. Slowly, one small hand reached out, fingers closed around a triangle. He nibbled the corner. Then another bite, then another. The man went completely still. Mia kept her eyes on the boy, smiling like this was the most normal thing in the world. "Good job. What's your name, sweetheart?" A whisper so quiet she almost missed it. Luca, she repeated, like it was the nicest word she'd heard all night. "That's a strong name. I'm Mia." Luca took another bite, chewing slowly, color creeping back into his pale cheeks. Mia glanced up at the man. He was staring at his son like he'd never seen him eat before, like the simple act of chewing was some kind of miracle. His throat worked hard. The hand on Luca's back flexed, then relaxed, like he didn't know whether to hold tighter or let go. When the plate was empty, Luca looked at Mia with wide, wondering eyes. "More?" he asked, voice tiny and hopeful. Mia laughed soft, surprised, warm. "You bet. Give me 2 minutes." She stood, feeling the man's gaze follow her all the way to the kitchen. Behind the counter, she pressed her palms to the cool steel, breathing out shakily. She didn't know, sir, who they were. She didn't know why a child that small looked like he carried the weight of the world. But she knew hunger, she knew grief, she knew the kind of silence that came after loss, and she knew she wasn't going to let that little boy leave without another bite. When she came back with fresh triangles and a small glass of chocolate milk, Luca reached for it eagerly. The man finally spoke again, voice quieter than before. He hasn't eaten more than a few bites in days. Not since. He stopped, jaw tight. Thank you. Mia met his eyes, really met them this time. You don't have to thank me, she said. Just glad he's eating. Luca finished the second plate, yawned huge, and leaned against his father's side. Within minutes his eyes drifted shut, small hands still clutching Mia's apron string like he was afraid she'd vanish. The man looked down at his sleeping son, then back at Mia. Something in his expression cracked just a hairline fracture in all that iron. I'm Damien, he said, almost like he was testing the word. Mia, she answered again, even though he already knew. For a long moment neither of them spoke. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, in the flickering light of a dying bulb, a waitress in a faded apron, and a man who looked like he owned the darkness sat in silence while a little boy slept between them. And for the first time in years, Damien Moretti felt his heartbeat like it remembered how. Mia didn't sleep much that night. She lay in her small apartment, above the laundromat, listening to the dryer's thump below like a heartbeat that wouldn't slow. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Luca's tiny hand clutching that apron string, the way his whole body relaxed once the food hit his stomach. And then there was Damien, those storm-gray eyes watching her like she'd handed him back something he thought he'd lost forever. She told herself it was just one night, a kind gesture, nothing more. But the next evening, right at 7, the bell jingled again. Luca walked in first this time, holding his father's hand. He was wearing a clean blue hoodie that looked too big for him, sleeves dangling past his fingertips. His eyes scanned the diner until they landed on Mia behind the counter, and his face lit up like someone flipped a switch. Grilled cheese? He asked, voice small but hopeful. Mia couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. Coming right up, buddy. Damien guided Luca to the same corner booth. He didn't sit right away, just stood there for a second, coat still on, looking around like he was checking corners out of habit. Then he slid in beside his son. Mia brought the plate herself, 2 perfect triangles, golden and steaming, with a little pile of ketchup on the side because she remembered how Luca had dipped his finger in it last night, like it was treasure. Luca attacked it immediately, cheeks puffing out as he chewed. Damien ordered black coffee again, but this time he added, "And whatever you're having." She raised, an eyebrow. "You sure? My dinner special is just leftover meatloaf and mashed potatoes. Sounds perfect." She brought 3 plates, sat across from them for a minute, while Luca ate, talking to him about nothing important, how the rain last night made the streetlights look like stars on the sidewalk, how she once tried to build a fort out of diner napkins, and it collapsed on her head. Luca actually giggled around a mouthful of cheese. It was the sweetest sound Mia had heard in years. Damien didn't eat much. He mostly watched his son smile, watched Mia talk to him like he was the most interesting person in the room, watched the way her apron strings swung when she leaned forward to wipe ketchup from Luca's chin with a napkin. When Luca finished, he pushed the empty plate away and looked up at Mia with serious eyes. "You come home with us?" he asked. Mia blinked. Damien went still. "Luca," Damien started, voice gentle but firm. But the boy was already reaching across the table, small fingers wrapping around Mia's wrist. "Please, you make the best food. And Papa doesn't know stories like you." Mia's throat tightened. She looked at Damien. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even surprised. He just looked tired, like a man carrying too much for too long. "I have to finish closing," she said softly to Luca. "But maybe tomorrow? If your dad says it's okay." Luca turned those big eyes on his father. Damien exhaled through his nose. "If Mia wants to come for dinner tomorrow, she's welcome." Luca beamed. Mia felt something warm bloom in her chest, dangerous, hopeful, terrifying. After Luca drew another picture on a napkin, this time a stick figure girl with a big smile handing a sandwich to a small boy, Damien stood to leave. He pulled out a thick fold of cash, way more than the bill, and set it on the table. "Keep the change," he said. "That's too much." "It's not." His voice dropped lower. "For last night. For tonight. For making him eat." Mia pushed the money back an inch. I didn't do it for money. He looked at her, then really looked, like he was seeing past the apron, past the tired eyes, straight to whatever was underneath. I know, he said quietly. They left. Mia locked the door behind them, flipped the sign to closed, and leaned her forehead against the cool glass. She didn't know what she was doing. She didn't know who Damien Moretti really was, though something in the way those men had backed off last night whispered that he wasn't just any father with a sad kid. But she knew Lucas' laugh now. She knew the way Damien's shoulders dropped a fraction when his son smiled, and she knew she was already in too deep to walk away. The next night came faster than she expected. She showed up at the diner early, nervous, apron swapped for a simple black sweater and jeans. Damien's car, a sleek black SUV, with tinted windows, pulled up at exactly 7. Luca waved frantically from the back seat. Damien got out to open the door for her. You didn't, sir, have to come, he said, but his tone said the opposite. I wanted to. He nodded once, then get in. The drive was quiet, except for Luca chattering about a cartoon he'd watched. Damien's hands were steady on the wheel, but Mia noticed the way his knuckles whitened every time they passed a dark alley. They arrived at a gated estate on the edge of the city-high stone walls, iron gates that opened silently as the car approached. Guards in dark suits nodded respectfully but didn't smile. Inside the house, everything was expensive and cold marble floors that echoed, crystal chandeliers that threw sharp light, furniture that looked like it had never been sat on. Luca tugged Mia straight upstairs. Come see my room. It was the only warm place in the house, walls painted soft blue, toys scattered across a thick rug, books piled on a small shelf. A framed photo on the nightstand showed a younger Damien holding a laughing woman with Lucas eyes. Mia's heart squeezed. That's Mama, Luca said quietly, following her gaze. She's in heaven now. Mia knelt beside him. She looks like she gave the best hugs. Luca nodded. She did. Downstairs, Damien waited in the kitchen. He'd taken off his coat, rolled up the sleeves of his black shirt, revealing forearms corded with muscle and faint scars. He was stirring something on the stove like it was the most normal thing in the world. Pasta, he said when she walked in. Luca likes it simple. Butter and cheese. Mia smiled. Sounds perfect. They, sir, ate at the long dining table, Luca between them, talking non-stop. Damien listened more than he spoke, but every time Luca laughed, his eyes softened. After dinner, Luca insisted on a story. Mia sat on the edge of his bed, telling him about a brave little dragon who was afraid of fire until he learned it could keep him warm. Luca fell asleep halfway through, small hand still holding hers. Damien stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching. When she slipped out and closed the door softly, he was waiting in the hallway. Thank you, he said again. You keep saying that, because you keep giving me reasons to. They walked downstairs in silence. At the front door, he paused. You don't have to come back, he said. This world, it's not safe, not kind. Mia looked up at him. I know. Then why? Because Luca needs someone who sees him. And you, she hesitated. You look like you need someone who sees you too. Damien's breath caught just for a second. Then he reached out, brushed a stray hair from her cheek with the back of his knuckles. The touch was light, careful, like he was afraid he'd break something. Come back tomorrow, he said. It wasn't a question. Mia nodded. As she drove away, the gates closing behind her, she realized she wasn't scared. She was falling, and she had no idea how to stop. Mia told herself she'd only go back once more, just to check on Luca, just to make sure the grilled cheese still made him smile. But the next evening came, and there she was, sir. Again standing outside the diner after her shift, watching the black SUV pull up like clockwork. Luca waved from the back window, both hands flapping like little bird wings. Damien stepped out, opened the door for her without a word, and she slid inside like it was the most natural thing she'd ever done. The drive was quieter this time. Luca had fallen asleep against the leather seat, cheeks smushed, tiny snores filling the car. Damien's hands flexed on the wheel every few minutes, like he was fighting something inside. You okay? Mia asked softly. He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. You keep asking me that, because you keep looking like the world's sitting on your chest. A muscle ticked in his jaw. Habit. She didn't push. Instead, she reached back and gently tucked Lucas' hoodie over his shoulders like a blanket. Damien watched the movement in the mirror, watched her fingers brush the boy's hair back from his forehead on. Something in his expression softened so fast it almost hurt to see. When they reached the house, Luca woke up cranky and clingy. He refused to let go of Mia's hand, dragging her straight to the kitchen. "Pancakes?" he asked, rubbing sleepy eyes. Mia laughed. "For dinner?" Bold choice. Damien leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "He's allowed one night of chaos a week. Doctor's orders." Mia raised an eyebrow. "You have a doctor who prescribes pancakes? Best kind of medicine." She ended up making them anyway, fluffy stacks with butter melting, into syrup lakes. Luca sat on a stool too tall for him, legs swinging, chattering about a dream he'd had where he was a superhero who could fly but only when he ate enough cheese. Mia listened like every word was gold. Damien watched them both, coffee forgotten in his hand. After dinner, Luca insisted on showing Mia his favorite hiding spot, a tiny alcove behind the bookshelf in the living room where he kept a stash of crayons and old coloring books. She crawled in after him, knees on the rug, coloring a dragon while he told her it needed purple wings because purple was brave. Damien found them there 20 minutes later. He didn't say anything at first, just stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the hallway light, watching his son laugh so hard he snorted when Mia drew the dragon wearing sunglasses. Luca looked up. "Papa, come color." Damien hesitated like the invitation caught him off guard. Then he lowered himself to the floor, long legs folding awkwardly in the small space. He took a crayon red and added flames to the dragon's mouth. Careful strokes, precise. Like even coloring required control. Luca beamed. "You're good at fire." Damien's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "I've had practice." Mia met his eyes over Luca's head. The air felt thicker, suddenly charged with things neither of them had said yet. When Luca yawned and rubbed his eyes, Damien scooped him up. "Bedtime, Piccolo." Luca reached for Mia. "Story?" She followed them upstairs. In Luca's room she sat on the edge of the bed again, telling the same dragon story but adding new parts. How the dragon learned to share his fire with friends who were cold. Luca's eyes fluttered shut halfway through, small hands slipping into hers. Damien stood in the doorway again, arms crossed, but this time he didn't look guarded. He looked raw. After she tucked the blanket around Luca, she stepped into the hallway. Damien didn't move. They were close enough that she could smell the faint cedar of his cologne mixed with the day's rain. "You're good with him," he said quietly. "He makes it easy." Damien looked down the hall, then back at her. "Not many people get past the walls I built. He doesn't let them. You walked right through." Mia swallowed. "I didn't mean to." "I know." He took a half step closer. "But I'm glad you did." Silence stretched between them, soft, heavy, full of possibility. Then a sharp knock echoed from downstairs. Heavy, official. Damien's entire body changed, shoulders squaring, eyes going cold in an instant. The man who'd just colored a dragon disappeared. The boss returned. "Stay here," he said, voice low. Mia nodded, heart suddenly hammering. She waited in the hallway, listening to muffled voices rising from the foyer. Italian words she didn't understand, but the tone was unmistakable threat. Minutes later, Damien came back up the stairs. His face was tight, jaw locked. "Everything okay?" she asked. He stopped in front of her. "Old business. Nothing you need to worry, sir." "About." But his eyes said different. Mia reached out hesitant and touched his arm. "If it's about Luca, it always is." He covered her hand with his, warm and rough. "They know he's my weakness. They've known for years." Her stomach twisted. "And now they know about you too." The words landed like stones. Mia didn't pull away. "I'm not scared. You should be, I'm not." Damien searched her face like he was looking for the lie, and couldn't find it. Then he did something she never expected. He leaned down and pressed his forehead to hers just for a second, eyes closed, breathing her in like she was oxygen after drowning. "Thank you," he whispered, "for not running." Mia's heart slammed against her ribs. "I'm not going anywhere." When he pulled back, his eyes were different, darker, warmer, full of something that looked a lot like fear and hope tangled together. Downstairs, Marco, his second in command, waited with a grim expression. "Boss," Marco said quietly, "they're testing us. Rossi's crew. They sent a message. Damien's hand tightened on the banister. Then we send one back. Mia stepped forward before she could stop herself. Wait. Both men looked at her. She met Damien's eyes. Whatever you're about to do, think about him. She nodded toward Lucas' door. He just started smiling again. Damien's throat worked. I know. Marco cleared his throat. We can handle it quiet. No blood. Damien nodded once. Do it. Marco left. Damien turned back to Mia. You shouldn't, sir. Have heard that. I did. She lifted her chin. And I'm still here. He stared at her for a long beat. Then he reached out, cupped the side of her face with one careful hand, thumb brushing her cheekbone. You're dangerous, he murmured. Me? She gave a small, shaky laugh. You're the one with the scary friends. No. His voice dropped. You. Because you make me want things I stopped wanting a long time ago. Mia's breath caught. He didn't kiss her, not yet, but the space between them felt smaller than ever. And when he finally walked her to the car later, his hand lingered on her lower back, protective, possessive, gentle all at once. As the gates closed behind her, Mia pressed her fingers to her cheek where he'd touched her. She wasn't scared of the danger. She was scared of how much she already cared. Maya woke up the next morning with the faint scent of Quo, Damien's cologne still clinging to her sweater like cedar and rain, and something darker she couldn't name. She stared at the ceiling of her tiny apartment, heart racing from dreams she couldn't quite remember, only that they involved gray eyes and small hands reaching for her. She told herself she was being ridiculous. She was a waitress in a dying diner. He was, whatever he was, a man with guards at gates and enemies who sent messages with fists and guns. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was dangerous. But when her phone buzzed at noon with a simple text unknown number, Luca asks if you'll come for lunch. She felt the pull, sir. Like gravity. She replied before she could talk herself out of it. Tell him I'll be there at 1. The gates opened for her like they recognized her now. The guard at the entrance even gave a small nod, instead of the usual blank stare. Inside, Luca was waiting on the front steps, bouncing on his toes in mismatched socks. Mia! He ran down and threw his arms around her legs. Papa said you could stay longer today. She laughed, lifting him up for a quick hug. Did he now? Damien appeared in the doorway, sleeves rolled to his elbows, hair slightly damp like he'd just showered. He looked less like a kingpin and more like a man who'd spent the morning trying to be normal. Hope you're hungry, he said. Luca insisted on helping with sandwiches. The kitchen smelled like toasted bread and fresh tomatoes. Luca stood on a step stool, carefully spreading peanut butter with a plastic knife that was too big for his hand. Damien supervised from the counter, arms crossed, but his eyes kept drifting to Mia. They ate at the small breakfast nook instead of the formal dining room, Luca chattering about a bird he'd seen outside, Damien listening with quiet intensity, Mia stealing glances at both of them. After lunch, Luca dragged her to the backyard. It was huge manicured lawn, a swing set that looked barely used, a stone fountain that trickled softly. Luca climbed onto the swing and demanded she push him. Hi, he yelled, laughing as the swing soared. Mia pushed gently at first, then, sir. Harder when he begged. Damien watched from the patio steps, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. When Luca tired out and ran off to chase a butterfly, Damien walked over. You're good at this, he said. At pushing swings? She smiled. Years of practice with my brother. He nodded slowly. He was younger? By 6 years. Her voice softened. He loved swings too. Used to make me push him until my arms hurt. Damien looked at Luca, then back at her. I'm sorry. Don't be. She shrugged. Just means I know what it feels like when they're gone. He stepped closer. You don't talk about it much. Neither do you. A beat of silence. Then he said, Elena Luca's mother, she died because of me. Wrong place, wrong time. What meant for my head found hers instead. Mia's breath caught. She reached out instinctively, fingers brushing his forearm. That's not your fault. It is. His voice was flat, practiced. I brought the war home. I couldn't protect her. I almost lost him too. Mia looked at Luca, who was now lying on the grass staring at clouds. You didn't lose him. He's right there. And he's smiling because of you. Damien followed her gaze. Because of you. She shook her head. We're a team. You, me, him. He turned to face her fully. Is that what we are? Her heart hammered. What do you want us to be? He didn't answer with words. Instead, he lifted his hand slow, giving her time to pull away and cupped her cheek. His thumb traced the line of her jaw, gentle enough, sir, to make her eyes sting. I want you here, he said quietly. Every day, not just for him, for me. Mia leaned into his touch. Then I'm here. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years and closed the distance. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, almost careful, like he was afraid she'd vanish. Then it deepened. His other hand slid to her waist, pulling her closer. She rose on her toes, fingers threading into his hair, tasting coffee and relief, and something fierce that felt like coming home. When they broke apart, foreheads resting together, he whispered, "Stay tonight, please." She nodded against him. Okay. Luca ran back over, oblivious. Papa, Mia. Look, I found a 4-leaf clover. Damien laughed low, surprised. Riolan scooped Luca up. That's lucky, Piccolo. Mia smiled up at them both, heart so full it hurt. But luck, she knew, had a way of running out. That night, after Luca was asleep, they sat on the patio under a blanket of stars. Damien's arm around her shoulders felt like the safest place in the world. I'm trying to change things, he said quietly. The business, the enemies. I want out for him, for us. Mia laced her fingers with his. Then we'll do it together. He kissed her temple, together. But in the distance, headlights flashed on the road beyond the gate, slow, deliberate. Damien tensed. Mia felt it too. The war wasn't over yet, and it was coming closer. The days blurred into a rhythm Mia never thought she'd find again, simple, warm, terrifyingly fragile. She started coming to the house every afternoon after her shift at the diner. She'd walk through the gates now without hesitation, the guards nodding like she belonged. Luca would be waiting sometimes at the door, sometimes running down the driveway in socks, arms wide for a hug that lifted him off the ground. Damien was always there too, quieter than before, but present, always present. They cooked together in the kitchen, nothing fancy. Spaghetti with sauce from a jar because Luca liked the way it splattered when he stirred. Sandwiches cut into shapes with cookie cutters Mia brought from home. Pancakes on Sundays, even when it wasn't Sunday, because Luca declared every day should feel like a weekend now. Damien watched it all like a man who'd forgotten how to breathe until someone reminded him. One evening, after Luca had fallen asleep early exhausted from an afternoon of chasing bubbles in the backyard, Mia and Damien sat on the living room couch. The house was quiet, except for the soft crackle of the fireplace Damien had lit, even though it wasn't cold. He had a glass of whiskey in his hand, but hadn't taken a sip. She had tea, cooling untouched on the coffee table. You're quiet tonight, she said. He stared into the flames, thinking about everything. He set the glass down. About how I used to come home to silence, Luca hiding in his room, me pretending I didn't notice. Then you walked in and everything changed. Mia shifted closer, tucking her legs under her. I didn't change anything. Luca was ready to come back. You were too. I just happened to be there. He turned to her, eyes dark and serious. You were more than there. You were the first person who looked at him like he wasn't broken, and you looked at me the same way. Her throat tightened. Because you're not. He let out a short, humorless laugh. I've done things, Mia. Things that would make you run if you knew. She reached for his hand, lacing their fingers together. Then tell me. Let me decide. He looked at their joined hands like they were something fragile and foreign. Then he started talking low, steady, like he was reciting facts instead of confessing sins. He told her about the family business, not the sanitized version, but the truth. Protection rackets that turned into extortion. Rivals who didn't back down. Nights when he came home with blood on his knuckles and guilt in his chest. Elena's death, how she'd stepped in front of Luca during a drive-by, meant to send a message. How Damien had hunted the men responsible, ended them, and still felt nothing but empty. Mia listened without interrupting. When he finished, silence hung between them like smoke. She squeezed his hand. You're still here, fighting to be better. That matters. He shook his head. It's not enough. It is to Luca. She leaned in, resting her forehead against his shoulder. And it's enough to me. Damien exhaled shakily. Then he turned, cupped her face with both hands, and kissed her. This time it wasn't careful. It was hungry years of holding back pouring out in the press of his mouth against hers. She kissed him back just as hard, fingers curling into his shirt, pulling him closer. His hands slid to her waist, lifting her onto his lap like she weighed nothing. She straddled him, knees sinking into the cushions, and felt the steady thump of his heart against hers. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. "You do." She brushed her thumb across his cheek. "We both do." He closed his eyes. "I'm trying to get out, for real this time. I've been talking to people cleaning the books, shifting assets. It's slow, dangerous, but I want a life where Luca can go to school without bodyguards, where you don't have to look over your shoulder." Mia's heart swelled. "Then let me help, whatever it takes." He opened his eyes, searching hers. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure." He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, like a promise. They stayed like that for a long time, tangled together on the couch, firelight dancing across their skin. When Luca's soft cry came from upstairs nightmare again, Damien started to move, but Mia stopped him. "I'll go," she said. She padded upstairs in her socks, found Luca curled tight under the blankets, tears on his cheeks. "Hey, sweetheart," she whispered, sliding in beside him. He burrowed into her side. "Bad dream, bad men." Mia held him, close, rubbing slow circles on his back. "They're not here. You're safe. Papa's downstairs. I'm here. We've got you." Luca sniffled. "You stay forever?" Her heart cracked open. "As long as you want me." He fell back asleep, holding her hand. When she returned downstairs, Damien was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, arms crossed, eyes soft. "He okay?" "Yeah," she smiled. "He asked if I'd stay forever." Damien stepped closer, wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. "What did you say?" "I said yes." He turned her in his arms, kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her mouth, gentle, reverent. "I love you," he said against her lips. The words sounded like they'd been waiting years to be spoken. Mia's eyes filled. "I love you too." They stood there in the quiet hallway, holding each other like the world outside didn't exist. But the world did exist, and it was closing in. The next morning, while Mia made breakfast and Luca colored at the table, Damien's phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at it, face going stone cold. Marco's name. He stepped outside to take the call. When he came back in, his jaw was set. Mia met his eyes across the room. "Trouble?" she asked quietly. He nodded once. "Rossi's crew. They're moving faster than I thought." Luca looked up from his drawing. "Papa?" Damien forced a smile. "Nothing, Piccolo. Just grown-up talk." But Mia saw the fear flicker behind his eyes, not for himself, but for them. She walked over, slipped her hand into his. "We'll face it," she said. He squeezed her fingers. Together. Outside, the sky was clear for the first time in weeks, but storm clouds were gathering on the horizon. The first crack appeared the next morning. Mia was in the kitchen flipping pancakes, Luca perched on his step stool, supervising with serious nods when Damien's phone rang again. He stepped onto the patio to answer it, but this time he didn't come back smiling. When he returned, his face was a mask, jaw locked, eyes distant. Luca didn't notice, too busy drawing smiley faces in the batter with his finger, but Mia did. She set the spatula down. "What is it?" Damien glanced at Luca, then back at her. "Marco. They hit one of our warehouses last night. Nothing major, empty crates, a message. But they're getting bolder." Mia's stomach dropped. "Rossi?" He nodded once. "They want me to back off the clean exit. They think if they push hard enough, I'll stay in the game, or bleed out trying to leave." Luca looked up from his drawing. "Papa? Why you sad?" Damien forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Not sad, Piccolo. Just thinking about grown-up stuff." He ruffled Luca's hair. "Pancakes smell amazing. Mia's the best chef." Luca beamed and went back to his masterpiece. Mia waited until Luca was distracted with syrup rivers before she spoke again, voice low. "What do you need from me?" Damien met her gaze. "Stay inside today. No diner, no errands. I'm doubling security." She wanted to argue her shift, started in 2 hours. Bills didn't pay themselves, but the look on his face stopped her. This wasn't a request. It was fear wrapped in command. "Okay," she said quietly, "but promise me you'll come home tonight." He reached across the counter, brushed his thumb over her knuckles. "I promise." The day dragged. Luca kept her busy building forts out of couch cushions, reading picture books until his voice went hoarse, drawing endless pictures of their little family. Stick figure Papa tall and strong, Mia with a big smile and apron, Luca in the middle holding both their hands. Mia taped the latest one to the fridge, right next to the 4-leaf clover Luca had pressed between wax paper. Every time she looked at it, her chest ached with something too big for words. Damien left after lunch, kissed Luca's forehead, kissed Mia longer, deeper, like he was memorizing her. "I'll be back before dinner," he said against her lips. He wasn't. By 6, the house felt too quiet. Luca asked for Papa 3 times. Mia distracted him with cartoons, then dinner mac and cheese from a box because her hands were shaking too much to make anything else. At 8, Luca fell asleep on the couch, curled against her side, thumb in his mouth like he hadn't done in months. Mia stared at the front door, willing it to open. When it finally died at 9:30, Damien stepped inside alone. His coat was torn at the shoulder. A cut above his eyebrow dripped blood slowly down his temple. His knuckles were raw. Mia was on her feet in an instant. Luca stirred but didn't wake. She crossed the room in 3 steps, hands hovering like she didn't know where to touch first. "You're hurt." "It's nothing." His voice was rough, just a scuffle. "They wanted to talk. I talked back." She took his face gently between her hands, tilting it to the light. "This isn't nothing." He closed his eyes under her touch. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you." "You didn't," she lied. "Come here." She led him to the bathroom, sat him on the edge of the tub, and grabbed the first aid kit from under the sink. She cleaned the cut with careful strokes, antiseptic, gauze, tape. He didn't flinch once. When she finished, she knelt in front of him, hands on his knees. "Tell me," he exhaled. "They offered a deal. Step back into the fold, or they come for what's mine." He looked at her, really looked. "They know about you, about us." Mia's pulse spiked. "And?" "I told them to go to hell," a ghost of a smile. "Politely." She let out a shaky laugh. "Of course you did." Damien reached for her, pulled her up until she was straddling his lap on the tub edge. He buried his face in her neck, breathing her in like she was the only thing keeping him steady. "I can't lose you," he whispered. "Either of you. You won't." She wrapped her arms around him, fingers threading through his hair. "We're tougher than we look." He pulled back just enough to kiss her slow, desperate, tasting of copper and relief. His hands slid under her shirt, palms, warm against her back, holding her like she might slip away. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I need to finish this. Fast. I've got a meeting tomorrow, final push to cut ties. If it works, we walk. If it doesn't," Mia cupped his face, "it will. And if it doesn't, we figure it out. Together." He nodded, eyes shining. Together. They stayed like that until Luca's sleepy voice drifted from the living room. "Mia? Papa?" Damien stood, lifting her with him like she weighed nothing. He carried her into the hall, set her down gently, then went to scoop Luca up. The boy blinked awake, saw the bandage on Damien's head, and his lip trembled. "Papa hurt?" Damien kissed his forehead. "Just a little scratch. Mia fixed it. She's good at fixing things." Luca reached for her. Mia took him, and the 3 of them ended up on the couch, Luca in the middle, safe between them. Damien's arm around her shoulders, her head on his chest, Luca's small hand clutching both of theirs. They didn't speak much after that, just sat in the quiet, listening to each other breathe. But Mia felt it, the clock ticking faster now. The storm wasn't coming anymore. It was here, and tomorrow would decide everything. The morning sun came through the curtains in thin golden stripes, but the house felt shadowed anyway. Damien was already up when Mia opened her eyes, standing at the bedroom window in just his black pants, back to her, shoulders rigid, like he was bracing for impact. She could see, the fresh bruise blooming along his ribs from last night's talk, purple against his skin. She slipped out of bed quietly, patted across the cool floor, and wrapped her arms around him from behind. Her cheek pressed to the warm skin between his shoulder blades. "You didn't sleep," she murmured. He covered her hands with his own. "Enough, liar." A small, tired huff of laughter escaped him. always. She turned him gently until they were face to face. The cut above his eyebrow was scabbing over, but the shadows under his eyes were darker than yesterday. She traced the line of his jaw with her thumb. "Tell me the plan," she said. "No secrets. Not anymore." Damien searched her face for a long moment like he was still waiting for her to flinch, to run. When she didn't, he nodded once. "Tonight, neutral ground, an old warehouse on the docks. Rossi's boss, Vincent, wants to sit down. He thinks he can intimidate me into staying under his thumb. I'm going to tell him I'm done. Clean break. No more territory. No more deals. If he accepts, we walk. If he doesn't, he let the sentence hang." Mia's stomach twisted. "You're not going alone." "I have to." "No." She tightened her grip on his arms. "You said together. That means I get a say. And I say Marco goes with you. And backup. And you come home." He studied her, something fierce and tender flashing in his eyes. "You're bossy when you're scared." "I'm terrified," she admitted, "but I trust you, so trust me to trust you." Damien exhaled, "Sir," then pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "Marco will be there, and 2 others, discreet. No guns unless it goes bad." She nodded against his chest. "And Luca? He stays here. With you. The house is locked down, best security I have. If anything feels wrong, you take him and go to the safe house upstate. Keys are in the drawer by the door. There's cash, passports, everything." Mia pulled back just enough to look at him. "We're not running yet." "No." He kissed her forehead. "Not yet." Luca woke up cranky and clingy, sensing the tension like kids do. He refused breakfast until Mia sat with him and fed him bites of toast like he was a baby bird again. Damien watched from the doorway, arms crossed, a small, aching smile on his face. After, Luca tugged Mia to the backyard. "Play tag?" She glanced at Damien. He nodded, a silent go-ahead. So they ran, Luca shrieking with laughter when she pretended to be too slow to catch him, collapsing in the grass when he finally tagged her back. Damien joined them eventually, letting Luca climb on his shoulders, pretending to be a monster while the boy giggled and pulled his hair. For an hour, it was perfect, normal, the kind of morning families are supposed to have, but the clock kept moving. By afternoon, Damien was in his office door half-closed making calls in low, clipped Italian. Mia stayed with Luca in the living room reading stories, building Lego towers, anything to keep the quiet from pressing in too hard. When the sun, started to dip, Damien found them. He knelt in front of Luca first. "Piccolo, I have to go out for a little while tonight. Important grown-up meeting." Luca's face fell. "With bad men?" Damien hesitated, then cupped his son's cheek. "Maybe, but Papa's going to fix things so there are no more bad men." "Okay?" Luca nodded slowly, then threw his arms around Damien's neck. "Come back fast." Damien held him tight. "I will, promise." Then he looked at Mia. She stood, heart hammering. "Be careful, sir." He rose, pulled her into his arms, kissed her like it was the last time, deep, slow, desperate. When he pulled back, his voice was rough. "I love you, both of you. We love you too," she whispered. He left at dusk, black coat, no tie, gun tucked discreetly at his back. Marco waited in the car outside. The gates closed behind them with a soft, final click. Mia locked every door, checked every window, then sat on the couch with Luca curled against her side. They watched cartoons, bright colors, and silly voices that felt too loud in the heavy quiet. Luca fell asleep halfway through the second episode, head on her lap. Mia stroked his hair, staring at the door. Hours passed. 10, 11, midnight. Her phone stayed silent. At 1 a.m, Luca stirred, sleepy voice muffled. "Papa home yet?" "Not yet, sweetheart." She kissed his forehead. "Soon." But doubt crept in cold, sharp. She carried Luca upstairs, tucked him into bed, then sat in the hallway outside his door, back against the wall, knees to chest, listening for tires on the gravel. At 2:30, headlights swept across the windows. Mia was on her feet in an instant. The front door opened. Damien stepped inside, coat gone, shirt torn, blood on his lip and knuckles. Marco behind him, limping slightly, face grim. Mia rushed forward. "You're okay?" Damien caught her before she could reach him, pulled her against his chest, arms crushing tight. "We're okay." She felt him tremble just once, barely noticeable. "What happened, sir?" Vincent didn't like the terms. His voice was low, ragged. Things got heated. Shots fired. Marco took a graze. I took a few hits, but we walked out. Mia pulled back, searching his face. And Rossi? Vincent's dead. Damien's eyes were flat. One of his own men turned. Tired of the war. Ended it himself. The crew's fracturing. They're done coming after us. Relief hit her so hard her knees buckled. Damien caught her, held her up. It's over? She whispered. Almost. He kissed her temple. One more loose end tomorrow, paperwork, witnesses. Then we're free. Luca's small voice came from the top of the stairs. Papa? Damien looked up, saw his son rubbing sleepy eyes, hair wild. He crossed the foyer in 3 strides, scooped Luca up, held him close. I'm home, Piccolo. Luca touched the blood on Damien's lip. Hurt? A little. Damien smiled, real, tired, beautiful. But Mia will fix it. She always does. Mia wiped her eyes, stepped forward. The 3 of them stood there in the foyer, bruised, exhausted, alive. And for the first time, the future didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a promise. The next day dawned gray and heavy, like the sky itself was holding its breath. Mia woke to the sound of rain tapping the windows, soft at first, then steady, insistent. Damien was already gone from the bed, but she found him in the kitchen, coffee in hand, staring out at the drenched garden. Luca was still asleep upstairs, the house quiet except for the drip-drip from the eaves. She, sir, walked up behind him, slipped her arms around his waist. You're up early, da couldn't sleep. He set the mug down, turned to face her. The bruise on his ribs had darkened overnight, but the cut on his brow looked better, cleaner. Today's the last piece. I meet with my lawyer at noon. Sign the papers, hand over what's left of the legitimate holdings. Testify in closed session tomorrow enough to bury Rossi's remnants without dragging us down. Then it's done. Mia searched his face. You sound like you don't believe it. I want to. He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. I've wanted out for years, but wanting and getting are different things. She rose on her toes, kissed him softly. You're getting it. We're getting it. He held her there for a long moment, like he was anchoring himself. Then he pulled back. Stay inside again today, just in case. Marco's sending extra men, quiet ones. You won't even see them. Mia nodded. I will, but you call me the second it's over. I will. He kissed her forehead, lingered. I love you, Mia. I love you too. Luca padded downstairs in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes. Papa going again? Damien knelt. Just for a few hours, Piccolo. Important grown-up stuff. Then I'm home for good, no more late nights. Luca hugged him tight. Promise? 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 After Damien left, car disappearing through the gates, Mia kept Luca busy. They baked cookies, chocolate chip, Luca's favorite flour dusting every surface. They built a blanket fort in the living room, read stories until their voices cracked with laughter. Every few minutes, Mia checked her phone. No messages yet. By 3 in the afternoon, the rain had turned to a downpour. Luca napped in the fort, curled under a blanket with his stuffed bear. Mia sat beside him, stroking his hair, trying to ignore the knot in her stomach. Her phone buzzed at Fort Welve. Damien's name. She answered on the first ring. Hey, you okay? His voice was calm, too calm. Meetings done. Papers signed. Lawyers taking them to the courthouse now. Relief flooded her so fast she almost laughed. It's over? Almost. One more thing, federal contact wants to meet in person tonight. Quick debrief. Neutral spot. I'll be home by 8. Mia exhaled. Be careful. Da always. A pause. Tell Luca I love him. And you're my everything. She smiled through sudden tears. Hurry home. She hung up, pressed the phone to her chest, and let out a shaky breath. Luca stirred. Papa? Soon, sweetheart. Very soon. The hours crawled. Mia made dinner, simple pasta, Luca's request. They ate in the fort, pretending it was a castle. She kept glancing at the clock. 6, 7, 7:30. At 7:45, headlights swept the driveway. Mia's heart jumped. She carried Luca to the window, saw Damien's SUV pull in. Rain sheeting off the hood, the door opened. Damien stepped out alone, coat collar up against the rain. He looked exhausted, shoulders slumped, but alive, whole. Mia unlocked the door before he, reached it, pulling it wide. He stepped inside, dripping, and she threw her arms around him, didn't care about the wet coat. the cold. He held her back, tight enough to bruise, face buried in her hair. "It's done," he whispered. "All of it. No more ties. No more threats. We're free." Mia pulled back, cupped his face. "You're sure?" He nodded. "The feds have what they need. Rossi's crew is in pieces, half arrested, half scattered. Vincent's death closed the circle. They're not coming back." Luca ran from the living room, bare feet slapping tile. "Papa!" Damien scooped him up, spun him one slow, careful, then held him close. "Hey, Piccolo. Papa's home. For good." Luca touched Damien's wet hair. "You're all rainy." Damien laughed low, real. "Yeah, but happy rainy." They moved to the couch, Luca between them, safe and warm. Damien told the boy a simple version. "Papa finished the big job. No more work trips. We get to stay home now. Play, eat cookies, be together." Luca's eyes went wide. "Forever? Forever?" Damien said. Mia leaned her head on Damien's shoulder, watching Luca process it, watching joy bloom slow and bright across his face. Later, after Luca was tucked in, stories told, kisses given, Mia and Damien stood in the hallway outside his door. She looked up at him. "You did it. We did it. We did it." He took her hand, led her downstairs to the living room. The fire was still going, low embers now. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, simple, black. Mia's breath caught. He, sir, opened it. A ring, white gold, single diamond, nothing flashy. Perfect. "I wanted to wait," he said quietly. "Make it right. Romantic. But I can't wait anymore. Mia Thompson, will you marry me? Be my wife? Be Lucas' mom? Be the center of this life we're building?" Tears slipped down her cheeks. She nodded, couldn't speak at first. Then, yes, yes. 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring on her finger, perfect fit. Then he kissed her slow, deep, full of everything they'd fought for. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "Thank you," he whispered, "for seeing me, for staying, for everything." She smiled through tears. "Thank you for letting me in." Outside, the rain softened to a gentle patter. Inside, the house felt warmer than it ever had. They were home. And for the first time, home didn't feel temporary. The weeks after the deal felt like waking from a long, bad dream. The house slowly changed. Damien had the security cameras removed from the front gates, only one small one left at the entrance, more for peace of mind than paranoia. The guards thinned out until there were none. The driveway felt wider, less like a fortress and more like a home. Damien sold the black SUV with the bulletproof glass, traded it for something ordinary, a dark gray family sedan that Luca immediately claimed as our adventure car. Mia quit the diner. Not because she had to, Damien never once asked, but because she wanted mornings with Luca, afternoons planning a future that didn't, involve midnight shifts and sore feet. She started helping Damien with the legitimate side of what was left, a small import business he'd quietly built years ago, coffee beans, olive oil, things that smelled like Italy and tasted like home. Nothing flashy, nothing dangerous. Luca thrived. He started kindergarten in the fall. Damien drove him the first day, Mia waiting at the school gate with a camera and a lump in her throat. Luca ran back at pickup with paint on his hands and a drawing of their new family. 3 stick figures holding hands under a big yellow sun. He taped it to the fridge himself, right in the center. Nights were quieter now. No late calls, no sudden knocks. Just the 3 of them, dinner at the table, stories before bed, Damien reading to Luca in Italian, while Mia listened from the doorway, heart full. But healing isn't linear. Some nights Damien woke gasping, sweat-soaked, reaching for a gun that wasn't there anymore. Mia would hold him until the shaking stopped, whispering that it was over, that he was safe, that they all were. Some afternoons Luca would go quiet, staring at the framed photo of Elena on his dresser. He'd ask questions, soft ones, like did Mama like pancakes, or would she like Mia? Damien always answered honestly. She'd love her, just like I do. Mia never felt like a replacement. She felt like an addition, like the family had grown instead of broken. One crisp October evening, they drove to the lake house Damien had bought months earlier, a small cabin an hour outside the city, nothing grand, just wood beams, a stone fireplace, and a dock that stretched into still water. They arrived at sunset. Luca ran ahead, laughing as leaves crunched under his boots. Damien carried their bags inside while Mia unpacked groceries. When she stepped onto the porch, she found him on the dokluka sitting beside him, legs dangling over the edge, both of them watching the sky turn pink and gold. She walked down quietly, sat on Damien's other side. Luca looked up. Papa said we can fish tomorrow, and swim if it's warm. Mia smiled. Sounds perfect. Damien slipped his arm around her shoulders, pulled her close. This place, it's ours. No history, no ghosts, just us. She leaned into him. I like the sound of that. Luca yawned, head dropping against Damien's arm. Can we stay forever? Damien kissed the top of his son's head. As long as you want, Piccolo. They watched the sun sink completely, stars pricking through the dark. No words for a while, just the lap of water against the pilings, the soft rustle of wind in the trees. Later, after Luca was asleep in the loft bed upstairs, Damien and Mia sat on the porch swing, wrapped in a blanket. The night was cool, but his warmth kept her from shivering. He took her hand, the one with the ring, and traced the diamond with his thumb. I keep thinking about the diner, he said quietly. That night, you sliding that plate across the table. Luca eating for the first time in days. Sir. Didn't know it then, but everything started right there. Mia turned to face him. I thought I was just feeding a hungry kid. Turns out I was feeding a family. He smiled, small, real, the kind that reached his eyes now. You saved us both. You saved yourselves, she said. I just loved you while you did it. He cupped her face, kissed her slow and deep, tasting like coffee and pine and forever. When he pulled back, his voice was rough with emotion. Marry me soon, he whispered. I don't want to wait anymore. Mia laughed softly. We're already planning the wedding, remember? Small. By the lake. Just us, Luca, Marco, a few friends. Next month, he said. Before the snow. She nodded. Next month. They stayed on the swing until the cold drove them inside, curled up by the fire, talking about nothing and everything. Names for future kids they might have, places they wanted to travel, the life they were finally free to live. Upstairs, Luca slept soundly, no nightmares tonight. Downstairs, two people who'd walked through fire held each other like they'd never let go. And outside, the lake reflected stars, clear, endless, peaceful. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel like something to survive. It felt like something to live. Years slipped by the way good years do, quiet, steady, full of small miracles that add up to something unbreakable. The lake house became their true home. They sold the city estate, too many echoes. Too much Marbleland made the cabin theirs. Sir. Damien expanded the porch, built a tree house with Luca one summer, mostly Luca directing while Damien hammered and laughed at his own mistakes. Mia planted a garden out back, herbs, tomatoes, wildflowers that Luca picked for her every morning like a ritual. The air always smelled like pine and fresh bread and the faint sweetness of whatever they were cooking together. Luca grew taller than Mia by the time he was 12, with Damien's dark hair and his mother's gentle eyes. He was kind, thoughtful, quick to laugh. No nightmares anymore, no hiding in corners. He played soccer after school, came home with muddy knees and stories about his friends. He called Mia mom without thinking, now had since he was 7, the words slipping out one night during bedtime stories like it had always belonged to her. She cried the first time. Damien held them both until the tears turned to smiles. They married on the dock the following spring, small, just as they'd planned. Marco stood as best man, gruff and teary-eyed under his sunglasses. A handful of old friends from Damien's legitimate business, a few from the diner days who still remembered Mia's grilled cheese. Luca carried the rings on a pillow, beaming like he'd won the biggest prize. The officiant spoke simple words under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. When Damien said I do, his voice cracked just a little and Mia kissed him, through happy tears while Luca cheered and through flower petals he'd gathered himself. Afterward they, danced on the grass to an old radio slow songs, silly ones, Luca twirling between them until he collapsed in giggles. Damien held Mia close that night on the porch swing, stars bright overhead. You kept your promise, he whispered. So did you. They built a life. Damien ran the import business, full-team coffee from small farms in Italy, olive oil from family groves, shipments that arrived smelling like sunshine and home. No shadows, no late-night calls. He coached Luca's soccer team on Saturdays, cheered louder than anyone when the boy scored. Mia opened a little cafe in the nearby town, nothing big, just a cozy spot with mismatched chairs, homemade pastries, and the best grilled cheese in 3 counties. Kids from the school came after class, Luca's friends filling the tables with laughter. She hired a couple of teenagers who needed jobs, taught them the same kindness she'd once shown a hungry little boy. Every year on their anniversary, they went back to Rossi's diner. The place hadn't changed much, the same checkered floor, the same flickering bulb in the corner booth. The owner had retired, but the new manager knew their story. Word travels in small towns. He always saved the booth, even when it was busy. They'd sit in the same spot, Damien across from Mia, Luca between them now, taller and louder, but still the same boy at heart. They'd order grilled cheese, cut into triangles, with chocolate milk for Luca and black coffee for Damien. Mia would smile across the table at Sir, the man who'd once walked in dripping rain and desperation. "Remember?" she'd ask softly. Damien would take her hand under the table, thumb tracing the ring he'd given her years ago. "How could I forget?" he'd say. "You stole my heart right here, in the shadows." Luca would roll his eyes affectionately, dramatically. "You guys are so mushy. Tell the part where I ate everything." They'd laugh, the sound filling the booth like sunlight. And every time, Damien would look at Mia, really look, like he still couldn't quite believe she stayed, and whisper, "Thank you." She'd squeeze his hand. "We saved each other." Outside, the world kept turning rain, sun, seasons changing, but inside that booth, time folded back on itself. A scared little boy eating for the first time, a broken man watching hope walk in wearing an apron, a family finding its way home. Years later, when Luca was grown and off at college, texts every day, visits on holidays, they still went back. Just the two of them now. Same booth, same order. Damien would slide into the seat across from her, gray streaking his temples, lines around his eyes from smiling so much more than he used to. "You know," he'd say, voice low and warm, "I still dream about that night sometimes. The rain, the diner, you sliding that plate over like it was nothing." Mia would reach for his hand. It wasn't nothing, it was everything. He'd lean across the table, kiss her softly, slow, familiar, full of all the years between. And in that quiet diner, under the same flickering light, 2 people who'd once been strangers would sit together, husband and wife, parents, survivors, lovers, and feel the simple, profound truth. Love doesn't always start with fireworks. Sometimes it starts with a grilled cheese sandwich and a little boy who finally ate. If this story touched your heart, drop a like, share your favorite moment in the comments, subscribe for more stories like this, and let me know what kind of tale you'd love to hear next. Thank you for staying with us until the end.